My daughter thought I was losing my mind. So I put my power of attorney in my lawyer's name, not hers. When my daughter Linda walked into that lawyer's office expecting to take control of my finances, the look of absolute shock on her face was worth every penny I'd paid in legal fees. She'd spent months telling everyone I was losing it, that I needed someone responsible to handle my affairs. Well, she was about to discover just how sharp this 78-year-old mind really was, and what happens when you try to manipulate someone who's been outsmarting people since before you were born. But let me start from the beginning, because this story is about more than just one moment of sweet justice. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Granny's Tales. My name is Dorothy. I'm 78 years old, and I've always believed that family comes first. Kindness should be repaid with kindness, and respect isn't something you lose just because you've accumulated a few wrinkles and gray hairs. For 43 years, I poured my heart, soul, and yes, my wallet, into raising and supporting my daughter Linda and helping with my 2 grandchildren, Michael and Sarah. I thought we had a relationship built on love and mutual respect. I was about to learn that what I thought was love was actually something much more calculating, and what I mistook for concern was really just someone positioning themselves for a payday. If you've ever felt underestimated because of your age, or had family members treat you like you're just a bank account with legs, you'll understand exactly why I did what I did. And if you believe that wisdom and a little strategic thinking can triumph over manipulation and greed, well, you're in for a treat today. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy watching entitled family members get their comeuppance, and subscribe to Granny's Tales for more stories where experience beats arrogance every single time. Let me paint you a picture of just how much I'd invested in Linda over the years, because it makes what happened next all the more shocking. When Linda got pregnant at 19 with Michael, who was there co-signing for her apartment because her credit was non-existent, me, when she decided she needed to finish college as a single mother who paid her tuition, her babysitting costs, and her grocery bills for 3 years, me. When she met David and wanted to have a big wedding despite having no savings, who quietly wrote a check for $15,000 so she could have her dream day. Me again. The generosity didn't stop there. When Sarah came along 2 years later, I became the built-in babysitter. Every weekend, every school holiday, every time Linda and David wanted a date night or a vacation, Grandma Dorothy was there. I didn't mind. I adored those children and cherished every moment with them. When David lost his job during the recession, guess who covered their mortgage for 6 months to keep them from losing their house? When Michael needed money for college, who had already started a fund that covered his entire 4-year education? When Sarah wanted to study abroad, who made that dream possible with a check for $8,000? I'd estimate that over the years, I'd given Linda and her family close to $200,000 in direct financial support, not counting the thousands of hours of free childcare, the home-cooked meals I'd bring over twice a week, and the countless times I'd dropped everything to help with some crisis or another. But somewhere along the way, what I thought was a loving relationship had morphed into something else entirely. The phone calls started coming only when they needed something. The visits became less frequent unless there was an occasion where gifts were expected. And most telling of all, Linda started treating me less like her mother and more like an aging resource that needed to be managed. It started subtly. Little comments about my driving. "Mom, are you sure you should be driving at night?" Gentle suggestions about my finances. "Mom, wouldn't it be easier if I just handled paying your bills? You know how confusing all those online systems can be. Comments about my memory. Mom, you already told me that story. Are you feeling okay? At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just worried about me. Maybe this was normal daughter-to-mother concern. But then I started noticing a pattern. The comments became more frequent and more pointed. During family dinners, Linda would exchange meaningful looks with David when I'd share a story or express an opinion. Mom's getting a little confused these days, she'd whisper to her friends, not realizing I could hear perfectly well from the kitchen. The real eye-opener came during Michael's graduation party. I'd organized and paid for the entire celebration, rented a hall, hired caterers, bought decorations, the works. It was a beautiful day, and I was so proud of my grandson earning his degree. But as I mingled with the other family members and friends, I started overhearing conversations that made my blood run cold. Yes, Linda's been such a devoted daughter, one of her friends was saying. It must be so hard dealing with Dorothy's declining mental state. Linda was telling me she's having to take over more and more of her mother's affairs. Declining mental state? I wanted to march over there and show them exactly how sharp my mental state was, but I kept listening. Oh, yes, another friend chimed in. Linda says Dorothy repeats herself constantly and gets confused about money. Thank goodness Linda is there to look out for her. Or who knows what would happen to that poor woman. Poor woman. I was standing 20 feet away, having just successfully organized a party for 60 people, managed all the logistics, and written checks for everything, without so much as consulting a calculator. But apparently, I was the poor, confused old lady who needed my daughter to save me from myself. That's when I realized what was happening. Linda wasn't worried about my well-being. She was laying groundwork. She was systematically building a narrative that I was incompetent, so that when the time came, no one would question her taking control of my finances. The pattern became impossible to ignore after that. Every conversation was peppered with little digs about my age, my memory, my capabilities. Mom, let me handle that. You know how these things confuse you. Mom, are you sure you remember correctly? Your memory hasn't been the same lately. Don't worry about understanding it, Mom. I'll take care of everything. But the comments weren't just annoying. They were strategic. Linda was having these conversations in front of other family members, in front of neighbors, in front of anyone who might later be called upon to confirm that Dorothy was indeed not herself anymore. The final betrayal came on a Tuesday afternoon in March, exactly 6 months after Michael's graduation party. I was in my garden tending to my roses, something I'd been doing successfully for 30 years, when Linda pulled into my driveway with her laptop bag and a stack of papers. "Hi, Mom," she said, giving me one of those overly bright smiles that I now recognized as her manipulation smile. "I brought David with me today because we need to talk to you about something important." David emerged from the passenger seat looking uncomfortable, which should have been my first warning sign. David never looked uncomfortable unless he knew he was about to do something wrong. They sat me down at my own kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed Linda countless meals as a child, helped her with homework, and listened to her teenage heartbreaks. And Linda pulled out a thick stack of legal documents. "Mom, David and I have been talking, and we're really worried about you," she began, using that patronizing tone you'd use with a child. "You've been forgetting things, getting confused about your finances, and frankly, we think it's time for someone to help you manage your affairs." I looked at the papers she was spreading across my table. Power of attorney documents, financial management agreements, medical decision-making authorizations. She'd had legal documents drawn up to take control of every aspect of my life. Now, I know this might seem overwhelming, Linda continued, but we've already talked to a lawyer and he says this is really the best thing for someone in your situation. All you need to do is sign here, here, and here, and I'll take care of everything for you. You won't have to worry about bills or investments or any of those confusing financial things anymore. I stared at those papers, and then I looked at my daughter's face. There wasn't love there, or even genuine concern. There was anticipation. She was excited about this moment. She'd been planning it, working toward it, and now she was so close to getting control of my assets that she could practically taste it. Linda, I said carefully, what exactly makes you think I need help so managing my affairs? Oh, Mom, she sighed, exchanging one of those looks with David. We've been over this. You repeat stories, you get confused about dates. You asked me 3 times last week what day Michael's birthday was. And remember when you couldn't figure out how to pay that electric bill online? These are signs, Mom. Signs that you need help. Let me tell you something about those signs. I had asked Linda about Michael's birthday because I was planning to take him on a surprise trip and needed to coordinate with his work schedule. I had asked her to help with the electric bill because their website had changed, and I couldn't find the login button, a problem that took 30 seconds to solve once she showed me. And yes, sometimes I tell the same stories, but that's because I'm proud of them, and I enjoy sharing them. Not because I've forgotten I've told them before. But Linda had taken every single normal interaction and twisted it into evidence of my incompetence. And another thing, Linda continued, really warming up to her pitch now. You've been spending money on unnecessary things. That new car you bought last year? Mom, you barely drive anywhere. And don't get me started on how much you spend on gifts for the grandchildren. It's not responsible financial planning for someone your age. That new car? It was a reliable sedan to replace my 15-year-old vehicle that was starting to have mechanical problems. And those excessive gifts for the grandchildren? I was spending my own money that I had earned and saved on my own family. But apparently, Linda thought she should have a say in how I spent every penny. I think you should take some time to consider this, I said, standing up from the table. This is a big decision. Mom, there's really nothing to consider, Linda said, and her voice had an edge to it now. You need help, and I'm offering to provide it. Fighting this will only make things harder for everyone. That's when I realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't a request. It was a demand. Linda had already made up her mind that she was going to control my finances, and she was going to make it happen, whether I cooperated or not. What if I say no? I asked quietly. Linda and David exchanged another look, and this time David spoke up. Dorothy, we've already consulted with an attorney about what options we have if you're not able to make rational decisions about your care. No one wants to go that route, but if you're not competent to manage your own affairs. The threat was clear. Sign over control willingly, or they'd try to have me declared incompetent and take control anyway. I looked at my daughter. This woman I'd raised, educated, supported, and loved unconditionally for 43 years. And I saw a stranger, someone who was willing to humiliate me, lie about me, and steal from me because she'd decided she deserved my money more than I deserved my independence. I need some time to think, I repeated, and this time my voice was steel. After they left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time staring at those papers they'd left behind. And that's when I made my decision. Linda wanted to play games with my competence. She wanted to underestimate the mind that had successfully raised her, built a career, managed investments, and accumulated the wealth she was so eager to control. Fine, let's play. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, not the one Linda had consulted with, but Martin Hendricks, who'd been handling my legal affairs for 20 years. Martin knew me, knew my capabilities, and most importantly, knew exactly how sharp my mind was. "Dorothy," Martin said when I explained the situation, "I'm not surprised this is happening. Unfortunately. I see it more often than you'd think. Adult children who convince themselves that taking control of their parents' finances is for the parents' own good, when really it's about their own financial interests." "What are my options?" I asked. "Well, the good news is that you're clearly competent. Your mental faculties are excellent, and you have every right to make your own decisions about your finances and medical care. The question is, how do you want to handle this?" That's when Martin suggested something I'd never considered. "Have you thought about putting your power of attorney in the hands of someone who can't benefit from your assets? Someone whose only interest is in carrying out your wishes?" "Like who?" "Like me. Or another attorney. It's actually quite common for people who don't have trustworthy family members, or who want to prevent family conflicts, to designate their lawyer as their power of attorney. That way, your affairs are managed by someone with a fiduciary duty to act in your best interests, not their own." The more we talked, the more perfect this solution became. Linda wanted someone else to manage my affairs. Fine, but it would be someone I chose, someone I trusted, and someone who couldn't inherit a penny from me. But I didn't stop there. If Linda wanted to play the long game, so would I. Over the next 2 months, I quietly observed my family's behavior with new eyes. I started paying attention to every comment, every assumption, every moment where they treated me like I was already incompetent, and I started documenting it. I also started testing them. During family dinners, I'd tell a story I'd told before, to see if anyone would jump on it, as evidence of my declining memory. I'd ask simple questions to see if they'd be answered with patience or patronizing condescension. I'd mention financial decisions to see who would immediately try to talk me out of them. The results were eye-opening and heartbreaking. Linda wasn't the only one who'd bought into the narrative that I was declining. She'd convinced Michael and Sarah, too. My own grandchildren, who I'd loved and supported their entire lives, were now speaking to me like I was a confused child. "Grandma, maybe you shouldn't be making big financial decisions right now," Michael said when I mentioned I was thinking about renovating my bathroom. This from the boy whose college education I'd paid for in full. "Grandma, are you sure you remember that correctly?" Sarah asked when I told a story about her childhood. This from the girl whose study abroad program I'd funded without a second thought. They'd all been poisoned against me, convinced that loving, generous Grandma Dorothy was now a liability who needed to be managed rather than respected. But I wasn't just observing, I was planning, and my plan was going to teach them all a lesson they'd never forget. 3 months after Linda's power of attorney ambush, I made my move. I called Linda and told her I'd been thinking about our conversation, and I'd decided she was right. I did need help managing my affairs. "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you've come to your senses," Linda said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. "I'll come over this weekend, and we can sign all the paperwork." "Actually," I said, "I've already taken care of it. I had Martin Hendricks draw up power of attorney documents, and I've already signed them." There was a pause. "Martin Hendricks? Mom, I thought we agreed you'd give power of attorney to me. No, Linda. You told me I needed someone to manage my affairs, and you were right. So I chose someone I trust completely to act in my best interests. Martin has been my lawyer for 20 years, and he has no personal stake in my finances. He's the perfect choice. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Finally, Linda said, "Mom, this is ridiculous. You don't need a lawyer to manage your money. You need family. You need someone who loves you. If you loved me, Linda, you wouldn't have spent months telling everyone I was incompetent. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to bully me into signing away my independence. And if you loved me, you wouldn't have threatened to have me declared mentally unfit when I didn't immediately do what you wanted. Mom, that's not... We were just worried about you." "No, Linda. You were worried about my money. There's a difference. But that was just the first part of my plan. Over the next few weeks, I implemented the rest of my strategy. First, I had Martin send official notification to Linda, David, Michael, and Sarah that all financial support from me was immediately suspended. No more mortgage help, no more car payments, no more credit card bailouts, no more emergency loans that never got repaid. Second, I changed my will. The bulk of my estate, which Linda had been counting on inheriting, was now going to charity. Michael and Sarah would still receive something. They were young and had been influenced by their parents. But Linda and David would get exactly $1 each, with a note explaining that their inheritance reflected the value they'd placed on our relationship. Third, I sold my house, the house Linda had been planning to inherit, and moved into a beautiful senior living community. Not because I needed assistance, but because I wanted the maintenance-free lifestyle and the social opportunities. Linda found out when she drove by and saw the "sold" sign in the yard. But the piece de resistance was the family meeting I called 4 weeks after I'd moved into my new place. "I wanted you all to know about some changes I've made," I announced to Linda, David, Michael, and Sarah as we sat in the community room of my new home. "As you know, I recently gave power of attorney to Martin Hendricks, since you all felt I needed help managing my affairs." Linda was practically vibrating with anger, but she was trying to keep it under control in front of the children. "Mom, we need to talk about this. You can't just..." "I can and I did," I interrupted. "But that's not all. I've also made some changes to my will, suspended all financial support to the family, and sold the house." The room erupted. Everyone was talking at once, demanding explanations, asking if I'd lost my mind, telling me I was making a mistake. I waited for the noise to die down, then said, "I want you to listen very carefully, because this is important. For months, Linda convinced all of you that I was incompetent. She told your friends, our neighbors, anyone who would listen, that poor old Dorothy was losing her mind and needed to be managed like a child." "Mom, that's not..." Linda started. "Let me finish," I said, and something in my voice made her stop talking. "You want to know what's really incompetent? Spending 43 years supporting and loving someone, only to have them try to steal your independence the moment they think you're vulnerable. You want to know what's really confused? Thinking that someone who successfully raised you, built a career and accumulated significant wealth would suddenly become unable to manage her own affairs just because she turned 78. I looked at each of them in turn. I am not incompetent. My mind is as sharp as it's ever been. My memory is excellent. My judgment is sound. And my ability to manage my finances is proven by the fact that I have finances to manage. What I am is tired of being disrespected, manipulated, And treated like a bank account with legs. Michael found his voice first. Grandma, we never meant... Michael, you told me I shouldn't make financial decisions. Sarah, you questioned my memory every time I told a story. David, you threatened to have me declared incompetent if I didn't sign over control of my money. And Linda... I turned to my daughter, this woman who had broken my heart. Linda, you orchestrated all of it. You spent months building a case that I was declining, so you could justify taking control of my assets. That's not true, Linda exploded. I was worried about you. I was trying to help. You were trying to help yourself, I said quietly. If you were worried about me, you would have talked to me about your concerns. You would have asked how you could support me while respecting my independence. Instead, you went behind my back, consulted lawyers, and tried to manipulate me into signing away my rights. The room was dead silent now. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. Martin Hendricks now has power of attorney, which means if I ever do become unable to manage my affairs, someone I trust will handle them according to my wishes, not their own financial interests. The house you expected to inherit has been sold, and I'm using that money to fund my life here, where I'm treated with respect and dignity. And the financial support you've all come to depend on has ended, because I'm no longer going to subsidize people who see me as nothing more than an aging cash cow. Linda was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger and frustration. You can't do this, Mom. That money should go to family. It did go to family, I said. For 43 years it went to family. I supported you through college, through motherhood, through unemployment, through every crisis and celebration. I paid for your wedding, your children's education, your mortgage, your vacations, your dreams. I gave and gave and gave. And the moment I needed respect in return, you tried to take away my independence. I stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on terms of mutual respect. You will stop treating me like I'm incompetent, stop making decisions for me, and stop assuming that my money is your money. If you can do that, we can rebuild our relationship. If you can't, then you've made your choice. The next few months were hard, I won't lie. Linda didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. Michael and Sarah were confused and hurt, caught between their parents' anger and their gradually dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, Grandma had a point. But slowly things began to change. Sarah was the first to come around. She called me one evening and said, Grandma, I've been thinking about what you said, and I realize I haven't been treating you very well. I'm sorry. I let Mom convince me that you were getting confused. But you're not confused at all, are you? No, sweetheart, I said. I'm not confused. I'm just tired of being underestimated. Michael took a little longer, but he eventually came to see me at my new place. He looked around my apartment, which I decorated exactly how I wanted with my own furniture and my own choices, and said, Grandma, this place is really nice, and you seem happy here. I am happy here, I told him. I'm treated like an adult who can make her own decisions. It's a refreshing change. The relationship with Michael and Sarah has slowly improved. They've learned to speak to me with respect, again to value my opinions, and to see me as their capable, intelligent grandmother, rather than a declining old woman who needs managing. They visit regularly, and we have real conversations about their lives, their goals, and their challenges. Linda and David, well, that's more complicated. Linda was furious about the changes to my will and kept pushing for me to fix what I'd done. She couldn't understand that I wasn't punishing her out of spite. I was protecting myself from future manipulation, and making sure my assets went to people and causes that valued me. It took almost a year, but Linda finally came to see me with a different attitude. She didn't apologize exactly, but she said, "Mom, I think maybe I misunderstood some things. Maybe I was overly concerned." "Maybe you were," I agreed. "We're still rebuilding trust. Linda has to prove to me that she sees me as her mother, not as an asset to be managed. Some days she does better than others, but at least now she knows that the days of taking advantage of my generosity while disrespecting my intelligence are over. The best part? My life is actually better now. I live in a beautiful community where my neighbors appreciate my wit and wisdom. I have a lawyer I trust, handling my legal affairs, which means I don't have to worry about family members with ulterior motives getting access to my finances. And I've learned to set boundaries with people who try to take advantage of my kindness. You know what I learned from all this? Respect isn't something you lose just because you've lived long enough to accumulate some wisdom and some assets. If anything, those things should earn you more respect, not less. For too long, I let Linda and the others treat me like I was a burden, like my age automatically made me incompetent, like loving them meant I had to accept being disrespected by them. I thought that being a good mother and grandmother meant never setting boundaries, never saying no, never standing up for myself when family members tried to take advantage of me. But here's the truth. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. Being generous doesn't mean you have to bankroll people who don't appreciate you. And being older doesn't mean you have to hand over control of your life to people who think they know better than you do. Age brings wisdom, experience, and perspective. I've lived through decades of challenges, made countless decisions, learned from my mistakes, and built a successful life. Why would I suddenly become incompetent to manage that life just because I've accumulated a few more years? The answer is, I wouldn't. And I didn't. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most will be the ones who try to take advantage of you. Sometimes you have to protect yourself from your own family. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their bad behavior and force them to face the consequences of their actions. Linda learned that her mother isn't a confused old woman who can be manipulated and controlled. She learned that I'm still the same sharp, determined person who raised her, and that underestimating me was a costly mistake. Most importantly, she learned that my love for her doesn't mean I'll allow her to disrespect me. And me. I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, set boundaries, and demand the respect you deserve. I learned that sometimes you have to be willing to lose a relationship in order to save it. And I learned that there's incredible freedom in knowing that people are in your life because they want to be, not because they're hoping to inherit from you someday. So here's my advice to anyone facing a similar situation. Don't let anyone convince you that getting older means giving up control of your own life. Don't let family members manipulate you with fake concern for your well-being, when what they really want is access to your assets. And don't be afraid to cut off people who see you as nothing more than a means to an end, even if those people are your own children. You've earned your independence, you've earned your dignity, and you've earned the right to be treated with respect, no matter how old you are. And that's how this 78-year-old grandmother taught her family that you don't mess with someone who's been outsmarting people since before you were born. Sometimes you have to remind people that wisdom comes with age, and so does the ability to make strategic decisions that protect your own interests. What do you think? Was I too harsh with Linda and the family? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? Have you ever had to deal with family members who tried to take advantage of your generosity or underestimate your capabilities? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. There's nothing I enjoy more than swapping tales with people who understand that getting older doesn't mean getting pushed around. If you enjoyed watching my family learn that Grandma still has some tricks up her sleeve, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to Granny's Tales for more stories of older folks who refuse to be underestimated. And hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when I share another tale of well-deserved comeuppance. Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, never underestimate the power of a grandmother who's had enough. We might have gray hair and reading glasses, but we also have decades of experience, accumulated wisdom, and the financial independence to back up our decisions. Cross us at your own peril. Until next time, this is Dorothy reminding you to respect your elders. We've earned it.